you know that Lake Lanier is not the only thriving black community that was flooded by the governments? Yeah, I'm keeping myself up in the sky. I don't want to be anywhere near that water down there. Period. So today we're going to talk about John Benson. This man, he was born a slave. He eventually became a freed man after the Civil War, and he worked and worked and worked until he eventually saved up to buy some land, which was actually the old land of his owner because they lost their land and he started to buy it up. And he started with 160 acres, and I think he eventually expanded. From his original land from 160 to I think like 3,000 acres of land, and he started this land and he started to build a community of black residents, and he started to build a really thriving community that was making a lot of progress, and they didn't like that. This was the Coalinga Academic and Industrial Institute. John Benson had founded this, and he was another person who also was open to working with people of all races. And this, I believe, this picture says it was in 1910. And at the time, this was making him a lot of money. And it said he was bringing in about $30,000 a year by like supplying things to people like cotton and other kinds of like crops and resources. And $30,000 a year back then would have been close to $1 million in today's time, which is kind of crazy. I want you to look at the date on this picture because it's dated 4/16/26. And in 1926, 100 years ago, they built a dam essentially to flood this town and some other towns nearby as well that I'll also talk about in probably another video. And so this was 100 years ago, and it's actually crazy because this is the 100th Black History Month like celebration. And so just a few months before this picture was taken or whatever, they probably celebrated, back at the time it was Negro History Week, but that was probably something that they celebrated, in this town of Coalinga that John Benson had started and that he was building. And I believe it had close to 40,000 black residents, and so it was very much a thriving community for us. And yeah, just knowing that they flooded it intentionally, and the people didn't have a warning, by the way, either. They had to pack up and leave because the water would just started rushing in, and they had no warning. Looking at this picture and knowing that this was 100 years ago, and knowing that this one single man was working towards generational wealth. I mean, $30,000 back then would have literally been close to $1 million in today's time in 100 years. Think about like the advancements, all of the communities that could have been formed from this one community that got flooded, like underneath this artificial lake. It's called Lake Martin, by the way. I was kind of avoiding saying the name of it, but the lake is called Lake Martin, and it's in Alabama. And underneath it is a thriving black community that would have been tremendously rich and luxurious. I just know it. Oh my gosh. So as I said before, the people who lived in this town and some other towns, there was another town called Susanna, Alabama as well. And I'll put a link to an article that I found some information from, so you can go read for yourself. I really encourage you to educate yourself about this because this is very interesting, and I'm going to take the time to learn more myself because I'm very, very shocked that this was 100 years ago. Also knowing that, the KKK was extremely active 100 years ago. This was definitely an intentional move to stop a thriving black community who was going to be building generational wealth. And all I can think of is I want my reparations. I really do, because $30,000 a year that's literally $1 million in today's time. And think about if that would have been over the last 100 years. I want my reparations, and I think we need to start demanding some reparations for what they did to our people, because that was not fair at all.